From years of anxiety to warrior and mentor, Bradley Robinson created the Anxiety Project to help you end your anxiety naturally. Let's mold the new you and let's end anxiety together.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Anxiety Project podcast. Welcome to episode 319. I am Brad Robinson. Today, let's talk about the inner small voice of the conscience, of God, of your higher selves. I've noticed, and the reason why I'm doing this episode today is because over the past, I would say, few months, the voice got distracted. I was less in touch with it. Things have been, what would you say, a little chaotic. I've been distracting myself whenever I would get the chance to be alone. Now that I have a baby boy in my life, I would watch something on YouTube or listen to a podcast or listen to an audiobook, which are all good things if you know, play with the fire safely, right? But I've noticed this past week that I've been distracting myself a little too much. So what I've been doing is I've been listening to YouTube, I've been listening the opening of Instagram, I've been listening just things that I've been watching stuff while eating, and I've noticed this week that this voice started to come back. I started to notice that there were moments of my day where I would be in silence doing something, and then this voice would chatter, 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 and then ideas would come up, and resolutions to problems I didn't even think of that I had would be resolved because I would just think about it. And the voice helped me through a lot of uncertainty and self doubt and anxiety that I didn't know I had until I shut off the distractions. So you can't hear this voice until your brain is quiet. This is the thing. There is that voice inside that we need to, well, prop up or support and acknowledge and strengthen. It's really important because if the voice is not there and your brain is all messy, well, you're just looking outward from the egoic self. You're just looking towards the self rather than, well, looking towards something else. I'm just trying to please me. I'm just trying to watch something. I'm just trying to eat something. I'm just trying to consume something. I'm just trying to buy something. It's all distractions from what exactly? Now, in Pinocchio, Jiminy Cricket, this is such an interesting character because in the beginning of that movie opens this big, beautiful, biblical looking book to the heroic adventure. And if you look more deeply, what that symbolizes, which is really profound, the the conscience, because Jimmy Cricket, JC, Southern slang for Jesus Christ, opens the book to the heroic adventure, your conscience. What does that mean? It's kind of obvious when you think about it, but at first glance, you can't really make heads and you can't really describe it, but it makes sense when you watch it. It clicks, but when you think about it, and the more you think about it, the more profound it actually is. The small voice of conscience tells you to venture forth into something you don't want to do because the adventures are always a risk in some way. At one point in the movie, later into the end of the movie, Pinocchio wants to tie a rock to his tail so that he can jump into the water, sink to the bottom, to find his father, who is apparently trapped in a belly of a whale. And that's interesting. So, as Pinocchio's tying this rock, the cricket, who is on the fence about this, maybe you shouldn't do this, Pinocchio, but is helping him tie the rock. Now, that's interesting. The conscience is like, whoa, 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 should we be even doing this? I don't think so. I don't think this is a good idea, but is still partaking in the forward march into the abyss. No, that's very interesting. And there is this small voice inside that calls you forth if you ask it for the answer. If you look towards it for a solution, more so than not, it tells you something you don't want to hear. It tells you to go forth into something you don't want to do. And that's because whatever is outside of your understanding is what grows you into a more integrated individual and complete person. Miracles is a consequence of restricted perception opening up. Restricted perception opening up, the breaking through of that self obsessed mindset. That's the pathway to the divine, to miracles. Recently, I was listening to Rogan, and Mel Gibson was on the show, and he said something about miracles that makes a lot of sense. And his faith in God made him stop being an alcoholic. And that was a miracle to him. No, no, he described it as something that he couldn't control. Like it was something that was destined to destroy him. He was born to be this way. And I believe that we all come into this world, and this is the Christ being broken in the arms of Mary. You know, we bring our children into the world knowing that the world can break them, but we have a faith that whatever is out there can make them stronger. And we push them out into the adventures of the world. And like Pinocchio, the adventures test them. Like Pinocchio encounters malevolence and satanic figures, and he injures himself. He goes to Pleasure Island, where he's overly consumed by everything you could ever want and desire, but then it's destroying people and making them more unconscious and regressing them into braying jackasses. And then those unconscious little boys are being pulled by the strings of manipulative psychopaths, taking advantage of their unconscious state to, well, give them personal gains in some manner. And that's very interesting. And so Mel Gibson, he was saying, like I was just controlled by this, demonic force. I was an alcoholic. That was just who I was. There was no breaking forth. But what was a miracle to him was the fact that he put his faith toward God, something higher than himself, the egoic mind. And that made him stop drinking alcohol, that he gave up control and believed that if I look towards this higher power, then maybe I can serve that ideal, serve that God, and not my internal God, which is the alcohol, which is just trying to feel good, whatever's possessing you. And I look to Goggins, David Goggins, the ultra marathon runner, Navy SEAL, record breaking, superhuman. And when he was 300. No, I don't think he was 300 pounds at the time. He was quite big. He was not trained to do this. He decided to run 100 miles thinking this is something he could do. You know, he's already a Navy SEAL. He broke through a lot of boundaries already, and he decides to run 100 miles. So he gets on the track, he runs, and eventually he gets to that finish line broken. He describes it as something like the most torture he's ever felt and the most pain he's ever felt in his whole life. But the miracle to him was the fact that a human being, not only himself, right? Just the fact that a human being could actually do this broke open this doorway to what's possible. He shattered his preconceptions of his identity during that. And he's not saying you should go out and run that, but he's just saying that for him, it just broke open the door because he just pushed past this tolerance that he didn't even know. Look, the pinnacle of his tolerance, he pushed past that and then past that. And imagine that just completely shifting who you thought you were. And that's a miracle. And I see miracles in my life all the time. I pray about something and the voice comes and guides me towards the answer. You pay attention to your higher calling and doors open to you. The miracle for me, being able to stop watching pornography, something that's been a part of me for 12 years, being able to go 6 years now without that, that's a miracle. I think about that all the time. It is truly outstanding how you can perceive yourself in the world once you decide to break forth your restrictions and the bubble and the set mindset. It is truly remarkable. And we see in Pinocchio that the adventure itself, with all its trouble, develops his inner conscience. Jiminy Cricket, gets wiser simultaneously. The conscience and the individual develop simultaneously. Why? Because you learn. You develop. The path you are on becomes clearer as you progress forward. You understand what to avoid. And then you also understand what to shoot towards. And if there is no adventure, there's no development, period. There's no development, like the call to Abraham. The call to Abraham is, well, he's in his 70s, living in his father's tent, and he gets this voice from God saying, go out into the world, go on this grand adventure. It's time. No matter how people think it's comfort that's going to satisfy and fulfill them. It's never the case. This is what's scary, even to me, because I like my comfort. I really do. I really want to just get up and whenever time I want and just, enjoy myself. But I can't enjoy it if that's my life. Like today, for example, horrible sleep last night. Terrible, terrible sleep. I got up. I felt like a train hit me. There was no way I wanted to get up today. I got up at 5:15 today. Horrible sleep. Got up. Why? The voice tells me to, because if I know what happens, because I've done it before. You go and you decide to sleep in, ignore the voice, and then you wake up and you're like, yeah, kind of took the easy road that time. But the funny thing, or not the funny thing, the interesting thing about today, I woke up early. It felt terrible. I got the ice bath ready. I went into the bathroom, sat down, journaled, meditated. I felt pretty good. Ideas started to come up, which was interesting. I just, I felt proud, that I'm still here. I'm still working towards something. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to feel terrible today. Maybe it's not a good idea, but I'm going with my gut because my faith is this trust over time that this is the right way, because it's proved me right so many other times that I'm just trusting that, even today that I'm tired, this is going to work out for my benefit. So I sit there and meditate. I feel pretty good. Meditation went pretty well, surprisingly. Sometimes I'm gonna get tired and I'll kind of doze off, but meditation, not bad. Breathing meditation. And ideas started to come for the podcast. And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. I started to write ideas down. And it was a good morning. It felt productive. And I went into the ice bath. It felt pretty good. Got the baby boy up from his sleep, walked around the place, spent time with him. I was definitely feeling tired, but it felt good to feel like, getting some stuff done. Ideas were on paper. I think I wrote a dream down. I think so, or maybe it was the night before, but if I have a dream, I'll write it down. I don't know, like it just felt like I was conquering the day, going against what the other voice was telling me, which was, why don't you just sleep in? Why don't you just take it easy? Why don't you just don't do the podcast today? You're tired. All of that voice is on one shoulder, that's the devil, and the other voice is this angel saying, you should get to it, man. You should avoid that drink or cake or food, or you should get up. You should do that. You should avoid this and that. And that's interesting, because why should you not listen to this voice who's saying to you, take it easy, relax? Because it will cause you to suffer. It will. And that's what I'm talking about earlier when I said the pattern of this trust was built, right? Because you walk down a pathway you're not familiar with, meditating, exercise, morning routine, night routine. It's like, oh God, it's difficult, but you're seeing benefits and it's working, and you feel better during the day, better sleeps start to occur, things like that manifest. So you built this trust that this hard system is to your benefit. And so when this voice is telling you, hey, maybe you should go to the gym today, it's right, because whenever you go, you feel pretty good. When you finish, you feel pretty good. If you avoid cake and carbohydrates today and you eat a clean diet, you feel really good. And I built that over time. Patterns, wins, wins, wins. So I trust in this voice when it tells me, hey, maybe you should go to that thing, you kind of, but I want to take it easy. That's what I said the other night. I was like, should I go to this thing? And the voice said, yeah, you should go, who knows what's going to happen. It's the unknown. It's pulling me to the unknown. But then I'm like, nah, I don't think I really want to, because I have stuff at home to do. And, I didn't listen to that voice. I went home. I don't always listen to it. I'm just going to tell you right now, but I do hear the voice. It's very clear to me. And so the voice that wants to keep you in the familiar is that voice, the devil side. It's like, yeah, you should just relax, eat cake, sleep in. The angel voice calls to you in a different manner. It tells you to go into the unknown, go do that difficult thing. Don't buy that. Don't buy that. Clean up the apartment. It's the voice of growth. It's the voice of growth. More so than not, when I listen to it, I am better off. I am. That's that trust. It's that trust. That's how I know it's right. That's what faith is. At first, when you're in your set mindset and you're stuck in the kind of familiar terrain, it's hard to like break through and get rid of habits that that are enjoyable. But the reason why I started was because I was suffering. I needed to flip my life over. I needed to do the opposite. Oh, I'm going out with my friend and smoking weed and doing this and drinking, 2 cups of coffee a day and, not sleeping properly and drinking wine and carbo. It's like the list goes on and on. You can imagine this giant list. But you start with one thing and you break through that one thing. For me, the one thing started with waking up early every day, same time. That was very challenging. It took me about a week to adjust, to get used to that, maybe probably more than that. It was difficult, really hard for me. And then the second thing I believe was coffee, caffeine. Started to drink decaf. That was that turned into a very positive thing because that was fueling my anxiety. And then you work towards more and more restrictions, sacrifices. Very important word, sacrifices. So to trust in this voice, you have to do what it says, especially if you don't like the answer. Now, negative thoughts come from an already established record. Michael Singer, a great spiritual teacher, says it best. He says, you go around in your life reacting to things. Oh, I don't like this and I don't like that. And these reactions build up in the mind's eye. I want to avoid this. I want to avoid this. I want to avoid this. Negative emotion, negative emotion. And we start to, restrict our lives because, we're getting angry all the time. We're just reactive. We don't challenge that reactive alarm bell, the voice that's just reactive, angry. I don't like this. I need to be here on time. Everything needs to be perfect and run on my schedule. The egoic self needs to run on my schedule, the self. So you're putting yourself above everything else and you become self-centered. I'm still working on this in my life. Before I was like king of my own castle, worshiping my own self, my own internal deities. They were running the show. And then the voice of conscience, God, I call it, it can be the solution to this self-centeredness, right? This obsessed record. And so you can bring about this voice if you start to silence a lot of the distractions during your day and you're in the car, silent, walking, you can begin to engage this other voice. Bring it up. You can even do it now while listening. Tell yourself, hi, how are you? There's that voice. There it is. And I use that voice when I'm in a negative emotional state. I tell myself, relax. And I got this from Michael Singer too. He says, when you feel like this thing is possessing you, this emotion, bring about this other mantra. Tell yourself to relax. And what will happen is you keep telling yourself, relax over and over again. I have a few meditations on here about that. You tell yourself, relax. You get this emotion that builds up, but then it dies. It sizzles away. So it builds up and then it leaves. It leaves. It's like the duck metaphor, the ducks who get into a fight and they fly, they get into a fight and then they kind of float away and they flap their wings to release the energy. And after they do that, they kind of just float and everything is forgotten, right? I know human beings are definitely not like that because we remember, especially malevolence, 100%. We never forget that for the rest of our life. But what we can do is the negative things that we encounter during the day, the things that we're trying to control, we can release that and trust in something else. We can trust in God. And how I perceive this is, well, why, why am I trying to control everything? Everything that's happening to me is a plan. It's all planned. It's all meant to be. There's meaning behind everything that's happening here. And I'm trying to make things go my way. Well, I'm just going to relax myself, relax into this moment. And there's also this other side of that where you gotta help your life, because you can't just tell people to live in the moment, right? That's not what I'm trying to say here, because people who are jobless and have in a bad relationship and are addicted to something, well, don't tell them to live in the moment. They need to sort out those things. And so in the Bible, what I learned was Jesus said, you know what, the pathway to heaven, it is when you orient yourself properly towards the highest good that you can think of. And then as you're moving towards the higher good and you're fixing your life, then you can live in the moment as you're progressing that way. And that's where it'll really hit me real good, is because I have my routines and I have my habits, and I have the things that really help me mentally. I feel like during the day I can live in the moment because I'm not adding more baggage on me. I'm not lying to people. I'm not going behind people's backs. I'm not trying to bend the world to my will. I've released a lot of trauma from my past. I've released a lot of baggage and of past beliefs. And so I feel like my past is my past. And now I'm progressing forward, and I can live in the moment as I'm progressing forward. I hope that makes sense to you guys. So, what was I saying? I was talking about negative thoughts. And I was talking about that voice of conscience, God, and that can be the solution to this record that's playing out. You can use this voice to tell yourself to relax, to calm down, be here, be present. What are you doing? What are you trying to control right now? And the more you tell yourself to relax, it works. The emotion builds up, and it overflows, but in outwards, and it goes away. It's not like the emotional glass is going to keep overflowing. Is when you chip away at this overflowing glass, the water gets less and less. And that's the thing. When you tell yourself during the day to relax at one thing, you release that tension, the emotional, reflexive habit that you've established around someone who's slow driving. You tell yourself, relax, enough. You do that around that particular instance. You are less reactive to that. The glass is a tiny bit emptier. You do that around your children and around dinner and around this and that. And next thing you know, you're less reactive to simple, unnecessary things in your life. And also, what I also challenge thoughts too, because I ask myself, what can I learn from this thought? If it's a negative thought, a really horrifying thought about someone that I love passing away, something I could do to somebody, the shadow element of the psyche, that, I could really hurt somebody, and like, oh my God, like, what do I do with that? And what is it trying to tell me? This thought, I look into it. I'm like, what are you trying to tell me here? And look, I look to it as a fearful child. It's just a very reactive, emotional child. You have the choice whether to buy into it or not. You have the choice. It's like Malfoy in Harry Potter. He pokes fun. He really terribly. He's a bully towards Ron. And the only reason Malfoy continues to do it is because Ron reacts to Malfoy. He gets angry at him. He's like, I don't, get out of here, Malfoy. But what if Ron, he reacted differently? What if Malfoy says, typically, how his family is poor, this and that. Ron reacts like, I hate you, Malfoy. What if Ron was like, my family is a bit poor. So what? I love them and I have a happy life. It's nice to see you, Malfoy. As hard as that is, like, what if he did that? Do you think Malfoy would have stuck around to push Ron? I used to do this to my sister growing up. Pushed her. I got a reaction out of her. I liked it. But what if she reacted differently? She just like went along with it, kind of did it back towards me. I probably wouldn't. I probably would have been like, oh, I kind of don't want to bother her. Really? What if she was, straightforward? Maybe she actually, pushed back on me. It's like, oh, I don't really want to, get on her bad side. So I'm going to get out of here. It's just her reaction kind of kept motivating me to tease. And so it's interesting. Like, why don't we do that to our thoughts? Because I noticed when I would do that to mine, challenge it, not react to it, kind of brush it off, saying, get out of here. That's silly. It works. It works. Perceiving it as something that's not you, but more so childish, more so like very reactive, emotional child. I think it works. The stronger the emotional reaction, the more it'll, what would you say, bully you? The more it'll stick around. You can't ignore fear. You have to transcend the fear. And that voice is always looking out for your best interest. The voice of God, the voice of your conscience, is looking out for your best interest. But you have to invite it in. It's a practice. It is a practice. A great example, I'm reading The Goblet of Fire right now. And in the book, Alistair Moody is teaching the defense against the dark arts class, the three terrible curses, right? I can't remember what they're called. I know there's the Imperious Curse and the Cruciatus Curse and Avad Cadaver. The Imperious Curse is the one you can control people. You can control them. He makes the spider, do weird things, on the desk. And, he invites the students to partake in this to see, to experience what it would be like. So with Harry, he would do the Imperious Curse. And I love Rowling. She lays this out brilliantly. So in his head, he would hear Moody jump onto the desk. And then Harry, he begins to fight the voice, right? Because the voice, a lot of people, they just can't fight it. So they do what the voice tells them. They react instinctively to that voice. But Harry, being the heroic, he's the hero and like the one to transcend that, that powerful voice. He starts to fight the voice, and Moody's shocked. He's like, "Oh my God! Like, look at Harry. He decided to fight it. He didn't fully, because Harry jumped onto the desk, but partially, and so he fell onto the ground. But Harry does learn to fight the voice, and I thought that's exactly what our minds are doing. The negative thoughts, we're reacting to them, but do we really fight back and say no? I reject it. No, I refuse to do that. No, it doesn't fit with who I want to be. It doesn't fit with who I want to be. Amazing thing to say. It really is an amazing thing to say. Do it. Because is the thought really helping you? Is the thought about the addiction you're trying to break useful for you? Rejecting it but bringing about a powerful counter thought, one that is empowering, one that you can turn to for to save yourself from the alluring, terrible thought that Cain from the Cain and Abel story invites in, the terrible thought that comes knocking on his door. God explains it that way. It's like, hey, Cain, the reason why you went down this dark pathway was because you invited this evil thought in and you let it, you entertained it. You gave it a lot of energy, man, and look what happened. You ended up in a very dark place, and now you're suffering. So to conclude this episode, there are some passage here in the Bible pertaining to the still small voice, God as being the still small voice. In Kings 1:19-12, and after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. Isaiah 30:21. And your ears shall hear a word behind you, saying, this is the way, walk in it, when you turn to the right or when you turn to the left. Kings 19:1-21. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, so may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow. Then he was afraid, and he arose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he asked that he might die, saying, it is enough now, O Lord. Take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. And he lay down and slept under a broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him and said to him, arise and eat. Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Psalm 119:105. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Psalm 119:10. With my whole heart I seek you. Let me not wander from your commandments. But Jeremiah 7:23. But this command I gave them, obey my voice, and I will be your God, and you shall be my people, and walk in all the way that I command you, that it may be well with you. Amazing, amazing. John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, was with God, and the Word was God. Amazing. Yeah, there's this small voice, a whisper. And Elijah, I believe it was Elijah that first in the Bible referred to the inner conscience as God, the inner small voice as being God. It's amazing. There is that voice. So are you paying attention to it? Are you distracting yourself too much to even know it's there? The voice is trying to help you. And it might be a feeling as well. The feeling is there too. That's also related to the voice, a feeling of, yeah, I could do better. Like coming into contact with somebody who's doing better than you, who's overcome an addiction that you're battling, and you feel like envious and you feel resentful and bitter towards that person. Maybe that reaction is the result of what you are lacking, the voice telling you something. Because the voice in Abel says, yeah, I could do better. Teach me. The voice of humility. The voice of Cain is of the self, of the ego, and not of the inner conscience. And that's where I'm going to leave you, everyone, on this podcast episode. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I'm very happy that I'm here to record this, because I really was on the edge of even doing this today. I was just like I was distracted with the baby boy and the family and things happening constantly in my life. So I'm really excited that I got this one done. And I was so excited about this episode because there's a lot of good stuff here to unpack. It was really fun. I had a great time. So thank you, everyone, for listening and being a supporter of the show. Rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time. My anxiety recovery program is available over at unpluganxiety.com. Included is the Releasing Trauma exercise. This is where you can walk through and release past trauma using an NLP-based audio recording by myself. That's at unpluganxiety.com. Go there to learn more.